So I'm Somna Prakaran and I and Teja Balan Prabhu on behalf of Science City Hyderabad invite you for the second session of the Science in the City stream at HLF 2025. And this session, I must say personally, is extremely close to me. I think it's a dreamy, futuristic session. Talking of cultural conversations, we're bringing two aspects here. We have a computational gastronomist and a chef in conversation discussing food. And that's because the questions we want to ask are, is food simply a matter of numbers and number of recipes and ingredients that go into those recipes? Or is food much more than that? Is food just a very complex emotion that is very, very difficult to put in such simplistic numbers? So that's what the conversation is going to be around, and leading that will be Meenakshi J, who is an independent journalist, writes extensively on food and travel and climate and sustainability. And her writing has been featured in New York Times, to Hakai Magazine, to Nat Geo and Smithsonian and many, many others. And we are really hoping that Meenakshi will really weave an excellent conversation between the two experts. Meenakshi, all over to you now.
A very good morning to everyone present here and Republic Day greetings. And thanks so much for taking the time out to attend this session, especially on a Sunday morning, on the future of food in the age of AI. Let me give a quick introduction of our two experts, Dr. Ganesh Bagler and Ruby Islam here. Let me do the Sri Ganesh with Dr. Ganesh. Dr. Ganesh Bagler, as a teenager, aspired to be an astronomer. Trained in physics, computer science, and computational biology, now all these are subjects which I surely dread, he has had an adventurous journey in computational gastronomy. By building keystone data repositories, algorithms, and applications, his lab has established the foundations of this emerging data science that blends food with artificial intelligence. Innovative research from his lab has contributed to this niche, dealing with food, flavors, nutrition, health, and sustainability. He has an audacious dream of transforming the food landscape by making food computable. Moving on to our second expert for today, Ruby Islam is the head chef at Manam Chocolate, a pioneer in Indian craft chocolate brand. A certified level 1, 2, and 3 chocolate taster by the International Institute of Chocolate and Cacao Tasting, she has led Manam Chocolate to garner international acclaim and awards. The brand secured 17 awards at the 2023 Academy of Chocolate Awards, UK, and was included in Time's prestigious list of the world's greatest places 2024. Earlier, she worked with ITC Hotels, contributing to the launch of Fabel, a delicious luxury chocolate brand, and revamping Nutmeg, the hotel chain's patisserie. So could we have a round of applause to the pathbreakers here? Now we are going to truly start this session on the sweetest note possible. By the way, it was a delightful coincidence that we are here to discuss the future of food in the age of AI, especially with Ruby. I'll tell you why it has been serendipitous, at least for me, because one of the most significant innovations in the chocolate industry in nearly 8 decades, and only the 4th type of chocolate, if you do not know, ever created in nearly 8 decades, Ruby, after dark, milk, and white, is called Ruby chocolate. Can you believe this? So how fitting for a session about innovation and intersection of food and technology, right? And that too with our own Ruby Islam. So without further ado, let's start today's session with Dr. Ganesh Bagler. Dr. Ganesh, please share with us what computational gastronomy is all about.
So what has artificial intelligence got to do with food and cooking? I'm sure that's the question that must be ringing in all of your minds. thinking food is something which is, and food and cooking is something which is personal, subjective, highly nuanced, whereas artificial intelligence, or for that matter, computer science, is more about quantification, and both of these cannot be married or blended together. But that's what computational gastronomy does. It looks at food and cooking through the lens of data. And we have been investigating various aspects of food and cooking, including traditional recipes, flavor molecules, nutritional perspective, health associations, and even carbon footprints of the recipes through the lens of data for the last 10 years in my laboratory. To tell you a little more, one of the things that is important when you want to look at any area through the lens of data, one of the classic example of that is Google Maps. Each one of us must have used physical maps long ago, but today we can't just get away from the Google Maps. And this was possible because of two things. One, quality curated data on geological coordinates across the world, and application of algorithms, the so-called shortest path algorithms, by which you can actually find out how do you go from point A to point B in the shortest time possible. Exactly in a similar manner, what we thought 10 years back, starting with a serendipitous study of Indian recipes and food pairing pattern in the Indian cuisine, is that how about collecting curated data on various aspects of food and creating databases, algorithms, and applications. That's what we have started doing. And maybe just a couple of applications that I can mention upfront. One of them is called the flavor pairing, because the question that a typical chef or anyone who cooks might want to ask is that if I do not have one of the ingredients that I need, what shall I replace it with? And for that, we have provided an answer through something called the flavor pairing application, by which you can find out counterparts of ingredients by virtue of their flavor profiles, and you can find out something to replace it with. And the second one, which is rather exciting that we have come up with, is a ChatGPT for recipes. All of you must have used ChatGPT, and we have created a ChatGPT for recipes to which you can say that, look, in my kitchen I have these 4 or 5 ingredients. Can you create a new recipe for me? And it will actually cook out, metaphorically speaking, a recipe starting with the title, the ingredients, and the instructions, all afresh for you. And of course, the question is it going to be palatable or not? That I will answer later, but these are some of the applications.
Thank you, Dr. Ganesh. And staying with flavor pairing, Manam of Hyderabad is known for eclectic flavor pairings. So we move on to Ms. Ruby Islam. Ruby, please share with us your work at Manam and what makes Manam sets it apart from other chocolate brands in India.
Thank you for that. So one of the things I wanted to start by sharing is that we do look at food being very, very subjective, and this is in continuation to what Dr. was saying. But we realized that over the years, with all the work that I've also done and with the kind of recipes that I create, food is rather objective. And when you put a plate out or you put a dish out in front of people, you will have a majority of people who like pretty much similar things. And you will also have a majority of people who will lean towards saying that maybe this needs improvement. And that, I think, has been one of the largest key in realizing how to move forward when you realize that food can be looked at a lens of not just intuition or of touch, feel, see, but there is a large aspect of science that goes behind this product. I laugh about this and tell my chefs that you come to work and you don't really work, you come to create joy. You come to create experiences, and all of that comes from science. What we do there is chemistry. And I think that is why today we are able to share with the world all the kind of flavors that we've worked on and all the pairings that we've done. I, over the years, working with the skill of chocolate, have also trained myself to be a certified chocolate taster. And in these sessions, I train my palate and I train my team's palate to sensitizing themselves to realize certain flavored notes. All of these come from molecules that exist in food. And it's so interesting that when you look at a product, you probably see it through a vision of, you know, what the color might be or what the temperature is when you see it or feel it. but there are all of these flavor molecules in the food that are contributing to a certain flavor note, and that takes you back to a certain memory. And I want to give you a small example of something that we've done there. Chakra Kili banana is something that everybody in Hyderabad almost resonates with so much, because that's that one fruit that a mother would have given you, packed in your tiffin box, asked you to eat it before you ran away to school, and a child would always say, no, I don't want to eat this, and this is something that's the last item in my tiffin box that I would want to eat. Today I'm able to create something which is of a soft serve, and that is completely derived from the starchy characteristic of the Chakra Keli banana, and has a flavor note that goes back to your childhood memories, but it is completely differentiated and nuanced. Food has changed over the years. It's beautiful to see how the history of it and the anatomy of it has evolved to make you feel very different from what it was probably years ago, but it still brings a memory. And I think when you start articulating flavor notes, when you start identifying them, and a lot of that will come from the science that we study of food, you start to be able to pair food better. You start to be able to match ingredients, or create something that carries one flavor note with the other, or create something that complements flavor notes to give you something that's mind-blowing or unexpected.
Staying with you, to what extent has Manam utilized the computational technology in your process of, for example, supply chain or production, flavor pairing as such? So to what extent have you utilized these tools?
So to be honest, I think I want to be able to reach a point where we utilize it much more than where we are today.
Okay.
But there are two aspects to this answer. And I would say this in context to chocolate, because everybody here is also, they don't need any education with chocolate. We've all grown up having this. And it's so relatable, right? But one large aspect that I want to share of chocolate making is that it is actually derived from a fruit that grows in the farms. And a lot of flavor notes that come off chocolate are coming from the way you treat the fruit at the farm. So today we are deep diving into breaking that thought process that we've all had, that chocolate comes in a prepackaged product from a faraway country or a Belgian, Swiss or French company who's making this. But to step back and realize that India is a tropical country and we grow cacao, and everything that you do at the farm level, right from growing to harvesting, and then post-harvesting practices such as fermentation have a very large role to play in the flavor note of the chocolate that we finally eat. So we're sitting on a lot of data. We're sitting on different parameters like acidity, pH levels, Brix, temperatures, relative humidity, and all of this data is on a graph which pretty much shows you every aspect at any point of time of the bean through the 6 days of the processing that it takes. And I'm actually waiting to use this tool to compute all of this data, because I would say that it's a large quantity, but analyzing that data allows me to understand what are the chemical changes or the compositions in that matter of 6 to 8 days that finally give me a bean. And then I decide what the approach to that bean is in terms of roasting or a degree of roasting, because all roasting have different kinds of profiles. So as a chef and a chocolate maker, to be able to identify what that roasting profile should be, what the process of stone grinding should be, and all the other steps that come with it is the most exciting part for me. And also in the aspect of supply chain, in the aspect of being able to control and then hence standardize the product, we have to look at food and also chocolate as a melange of these two parameters, which is science and intuition or creativity. And at each and every step, this is something that helps me.
Great. Dr. Ganesh, now that you have heard her as to what she wants the computational tools to be doing to the process, how do you think is AI already reshaping the traditional food systems or chocolate making process?
Before I answer your question, let me say something based on what Ruby mentioned. I meet two kind of chefs when I talk about computational gastronomy work. There are those who are traditional people, purist chefs, who scoff off of anything which is data-driven, quantitative. They say that my mother's recipe, or there is a quality in my hands which can create, which you cannot capture in any kind of numbers. And there is second kind of chefs who are appreciative of the slightly objective, quantifiable aspects of cooking and are willing to consider that something like computational gastronomy can be potentially be used. Quite clearly, Ruby is in the second category. Having said that, artificial intelligence in a big way, in fact, data science, should I say, has been in a big way being used in various aspects of food preparation, processing, right from smart agriculture, for example, managing the supply chain, also in terms of creating menus which are adaptive to the inventory that is there in the restaurant. There is a smart protein area wherein you are wanting to create a flavor that is matching to that of a meat, for example. Even that area is getting transformed with the use of data science. And there are other areas, for example, personalized nutrition. Because we have heard in one of the early sessions here, right here, about how nutrition is a critical aspect. And there is something, personalized nutrition is one of the major aspects which, when body parameters are taken from any given individual, right from your glucose levels to other aspects, height, weight, and activity aspects, it is possible to make recommendations using data-driven approaches about what you should eat so as to maintain better health. In this case, specifically type 2 diabetes, but it can be tailored for any disease which is lifestyle disorder. So there are a variety of topics, right from agricultural, as they say, from farm to fork, that data-driven approaches have been touching on our life.
Great. To what extent have you utilized human inputs in the development of these technological tools as such?
Pretty much. Like all of you know that ChatGPT, for example, would not have been built had there not been a huge digitized data that is available on the internet. All of these data have been gathered and in a very structured manner been fed into an algorithm which is called the large language model, which is what is behind the ChatGPT incidentally. So loosely speaking, ChatGPT, for example, is learning from patterns of information that is available on the internet. Exactly in a similar manner, when we started our work in computational gastronomy, one of the major challenges that we faced is that where is the data? Because in computer science, there is an adage which says garbage in, garbage out. If you do not feed quality curated information to the model, as they call it, the model is not going to be capable of answering anything meaningful at all. And when we started our work, believe it or not, with the Indian recipes, we were left with only 2,543 recipes from Tarla. That was our beginning point, thanks to this industrious lady who collected huge amount of data of recipes across the Indian subcontinent. But then we have used a huge information, which is available in the digitized format on the internet, books, cookery books, and there is a lot of manual intervention that has gone into it in curating it. For example, a recipe, which cuisine does it belong to? Geocultural origin does it belong to? That information had to be checked, manually checked and labeled. So we have done that. But at the same time, not everything could have been done manually. Remember I told you we started with 2,500 recipes. We are today sitting on more than 200,000, 2 lakh recipes from 74 countries. And these have more than 20,000 ingredients, around 276 cooking protocols, and around 90 utensils, etc. All of these could not have been done had we not used machine learning data science approaches. We have done that as well. For example, for recipes where there is no cooking time available, we have built models which will look at the recipe and will make a reliable prediction to the 94% accuracy, for example, about what cooking time it might take. So in summary, to answer your question, we have used a large amount of human curated data and a huge team, by the way. I have worked with, until today, we have worked with to the tune of 500 plus research interns in my lab who have actively contributed to building these repositories and algorithms and applications. So without manual intervention and without having computational approaches for curating it, what we have been able to create in the last 1 decade would not have been possible.
I do understand that this is a work in progress, but then could you please name some of the tools which are already in place and which the audience can also utilize?
So, all the tools that I mentioned just now, they are peer-reviewed and published. They are published in scientific research articles. Second, they are available on the websites. There is something called RecipeDB database, right? So, if you search by RecipeDB in Google, perhaps one of the earliest hits that you will get will be our database only. There is something called FlavorDB, another application where essentially you can do flavor pairing and you can find out, given an ingredient, what are the flavor molecules that are scientifically known from experimental studies reported in those ingredients, whether it is mango, tamarind, turmeric, or anything that you would use in the kitchen for that matter. So we have around 1,000 ingredients. And one of the most interesting one that is available, we have fondly called it as Ratatouille. I am sure many of you would have already seen that movie Ratatouille, about an adventurous rat which would like to learn cooking. So named after it, it's called, the algorithm is called Ratatouille, the tool is called Ratatouille, which is about creating novel recipes. And on that note, I would like to tell you is that, can you make a guess about how many recipes are available traditionally across all the cultures? To the tune of 100,000, 10,000, a million or a billion, if you can take a guess. Most of the times people cannot think beyond few 10,000, and those who are adventurous can hit upon a million probably. So the collected traditional recipes are to the tune of 1 million. But then, how many recipes can be created by varying quantities, the ingredients and processes? Well, that number is approximately 10 to the power 30, which is more than the estimated number of stars that are there in the whole universe. That's a salivatingly large number of recipes for the foodies among us, right? So Ratatouille allows you to actually create new recipes following the patterns of, in general, world cuisine, but now we have created algorithms like create an Italian recipe with so and so ingredient, it will try to cook it up. So these are a few of the applications that I've mentioned. You can look up our lab website for more other applications that we have created, which is for public consumption and for non-commercial utility.
Great. I'm sure Ruby must have already gone through the FlavorDB and other tools. So how do you plan to integrate some of the, the recipes as such in your everyday creations at Manam?
So I'd actually like to share something that we already do, and also how as a chef, these are very important aspects for taking next steps for creating something new, right? Let me talk about cacao. It is a fruit which has very, very different flavor notes. When you eat the cacao fruit, it actually reminds you of either how you felt when you ate a pineapple, or how you felt when you ate a passion fruit, or even a certain lime or a mango. That's the flavor note of the fruit, right? And all of them are in different variants and different species. So today in India, you have different colors and different shapes of cacao, and the taste inside is very different. Now, as a chocolate maker and a chocolatier, I'm very coaxed to bring out that flavor note into the chocolate that I am able to create without adding any artificial flavor notes or any of that. What we have done up until now, and we're very excited to do next, is to start off with, we've been able to use computational gastronomy to create a flavor wheel. Now, this flavor wheel is allows you to articulate what are the different flavor notes in certain pockets, which is either woody, floral, fruity, earthy, etc. And it also allows you to articulate what are the defects or ill flavor notes of the cacao fruit. So it's funny that I say this, but in our conversations, we generally say this smells like or tastes like cardboard, or this tastes like wet socks. Those are the kind of flavor notes that we actually articulate, because it helps us understand what are the positive and what are the negative flavor notes. So not only have we been able to identify what a particular cacao from a certain region would taste like and how I can use that into creating the chocolate of that region, but it has also taught us to teach our team and have them articulate and create QCs and hence standardization of the product that we make. So when you speak that language and when you're able to let your team also speak that language, you also sort of start moving to creating something that is delicious, unique, and one level above. And that has really helped us because we've been sitting on a lot of data and sort of mapping what are these molecules and how can we articulate them, let's say as a pineapple or a raspberry or a brown sugar note. Also going forward, I think for a chef, most times creating recipes comes from your experience or your vision of what an ideal food product could look like. It also comes from your expression of what is nice and what is not nice. But when you start looking at food as something which has a particular attribute to give you, when you have the knowledge of that, you then start trying to pair what really works. And that's something that you would have not thought of because you're sort of limited to what your exposure is or what your past memories are. So that's why I think even when it comes to different cuisines, some of us can relate to an Italian cuisine, some of us probably cannot relate to, say, a very authentic Chinese cuisine. Because you're not used to it, you've not had it, your palate can't recognize the flavors, it's not something of your past memory, it's not something of the childhood that you would have had, and it's not familiar to you. But when you look at it from a viewpoint of saying, maybe this chocolate can pair really well with this blue cheese, because the chemical compositions are similar and they pair well, I'm able to create something for you that you would have never thought of before. So even as a chef, it breaks certain barriers that we have or the limitations that we have of our exposures. And that's a journey that I'm really excited to see.
Right. You had mentioned about the human touch and the nostalgia associated with food and chocolate as such. So what are your thoughts on loss of human connection of food by using, sorry Dr. Bagler, by using artificial intelligence tools as such? So do you think there would be a loss of connection or?
No, I think it's a very important start point actually to establish that AI tools are not a replacement for chefs. It's not possible, it doesn't, it's not going to happen ever because you need somebody to use those tools and analyze them so that you can create a very differentiated product and excite the world because that's at the end of the day what food does. Of course, it's an item which gives you a lot of nutrition and is good for your body, but it also really excites you. And I want to emphasize that it is not a replacement, but it is a huge aid to a person who wants to create something which they would not have known of before. So to cite a very simple example, if I were to have many ingredients at home and ask AI to create a recipe, in spite of what the recipe that AI tool would generate, I will still as a person have that intuition of adding something or deleting something with that recipe, and that allows me to have a start point for creating that excitement to engage with the food. So I don't think it's ever a replacement. I think it also is an encouraging factor because a lot of people I know, in fact a lot of chefs also that I know, sometimes don't want to eat what they make. And I think it always baffles me that, you know, when you're creating something, when you're in front of ingredients, there is that salivating, there is drawing you towards making that product. And I think it's a great start point for people who don't necessarily look at food as something delicious, but just as a necessity. Maybe it's going to be a great encouraging moment for them to engage with food a lot more.
Just as a source of nourishment and not food. The ball is in your court now. So how are you going to convince chocolate brands or artisanal, brands like Manam to utilize AI tools so that they can compete with the other brands, although Manam actually is in a different league?
I know. Actually, I don't have to convince. It's already happening. When we created these tools, it was fun game. It was blue sky research that we were doing, trying to find patterns in the recipes, the way the ingredients are combined in the Indian cuisine vis-a-vis that of a Italian or a Mexican cuisine, etc. That's what we were doing. But as we kept collecting data, building algorithms, scaling it up. Remember the big game that data science plays is scale it up. It doesn't deal with 10 recipes or 100 recipes. It deals with hundreds of thousands of recipes in a very scalable fashion. algorithms like the so-called named entity recognition, which tries to identify culinary elements in the recipe, do that, for example. And to give illustrations of people who have been using it, by the way, the databases that we have created are copyrighted, and we have released it for public consumption for for personal utility, not for commercial utility. However, people I know are using it to some extent for commercial utility. As an academician, it gives me a pleasure, and as an entrepreneur, it gives me pain, a little bit of it. Having said that, I have come across entities. I'm giving you only a couple of few illustrations. One of them is making products using sorghum, millet-based products that they are trying to make. And one of the challenges while making that, making products like the chuda and the cookies, etc., that they were trying to make, they realized that the flavor notes are not appropriate when you're trying to use sorghum. And they use FlavorDB to come up with nature-like molecules which can be used in their products so as to increase the palatability of the sorghum-based and millet-based products, for example. There was another example of a homemaker turned entrepreneur from Bengal. I don't want to name her because she had confidentially talked to me. She has used FlavorDB to create bakeries and cakes so as to make them palatable, including chocolate-based products that we tried to make. And she was actually inspired by her husband's malady. She had diabetes and obesity, which she was trying to tackle incidentally. And the last example is that I keep getting these emails from people. So one of them is somebody working as a bartender, chief bartender in a New York city, and it's called Dead Rabbit. That's the name of the restaurant where he's working. He said that I've been using FlavorDB to find all kind of flavor combinations, and it has been super successful for me. So artisans and small-scale industries have already been using the databases and the applications that we are creating, and we have evidences for that already happening. And one of the notes I would like to make is that quite clearly, when we created these applications, the agenda was not to replace any creative endeavor. For that matter, artificial intelligence itself is all about imitating human intelligence and creativity. Cooking is one of that multi-sensorial aspect that we have imbibed as a culture, which involves all kind of senses: olfaction, gustatory mechanisms, texture, color, and vision. And therefore, it is a very, very complex downplay that is happening in the creative space of human beings. And computational gastronomy tries to capture it. But at the same time, I'm very clear about it. I'm just re-articulating what Ruby said, is that AI is not going to replace a chef. But a chef using AI will be replacing a chef not using AI. It's going to be an enabler, a big enabler, is what I firmly believe.
Great. That was a great pitch. So Ruby, now that he has pitched you about utilizing the AI tools, what features or special capabilities you think should an AI tool have or provide for the chocolate industry as such? Any special features?
You know, one of the things I want to share with what Dr. Ganesh was saying is that as a chef or as a person who's leading a brand which wants to give back to people in terms of excitement and also health, I would not look at AI just to give me an answer to replacing any ingredient that I don't have probably. But on the flip side, it's really about saying what is the information that I can get so that I will have the know-how to pair ingredients with another which I would have never thought of before. So it's really forward thinking. It's about making a change. It's about being able to access maybe the most not sought after ingredient which I would have not thought about in my food or in my chocolate making experience to take things forward. So I'd love to see this entire database which is sharing specifics of chemical compositions of molecules or flavor notes that actually contribute to a particular ingredient, because as a chef and as a person who wants to create things exciting, we want to always get into the depth of what we do. So, you know, I always look at another example of, let's say, growing up and having our parents and our ancestors creating recipes which are somehow naturally really, really good for the body. And over the years, I've been trying to find all these recipes and figure out how is it that they created these things without any recipe books, but it was just purely intuitive, and they made beautiful, delicious recipes, which we probably don't have access to today. But can I today get a database which allows me to map these, not just from a flavor standpoint, but also from a health aspect, to incorporate that in my recipes and talk about how food does not just have to be a one-time. And I always take that example going back to desserts and the chocolate that I make. People always ask me, do you not eat the food that you make? Like how are you sort of around chocolate all day long and eating this? Doesn't look like you're eating any of this. And I laugh and say, no, I start my day and end my day with eating chocolate. And it also goes back to the ingredient that I put into it. And I can tell you how high it is on antioxidants. And for me to be able to share that with everybody is just a pure joy. And that comes from the science of the ingredients that we use. So I would look at using this in every decision making. And I think it's going to be great benefit and not a replacement at all.
You are indeed lucky that you start your day and end your day with chocolate. I usually bloat the moment I smell chocolate. So, yeah, you are quite lucky. Coming to Dr. Baglas, how do you envision AI to make chocolate production or food production a sustainable and scalable affair as such?
Right. So one of the best things that data-driven approach does is collecting data on all aspects of it so as to enable you further. And as I said earlier, we have worked on tradition, which is recipes, traditional recipes, the flavors, the nutritional value, which is connected with health, and finally we have got into the carbon footprints of the recipes as well. Again, the idea is not to give anyone who is foodie here a guilt trip about whatever you are eating, it has got a carbon footprint, so be careful. But at the same time, the idea is that it does have a carbon footprint, everything that you eat. And what we have been able to do is to come up with estimated carbon footprints of any recipe that you on a day-to-day basis eat. If you eat a palak paneer or a dosa or a vada, what kind of a carbon footprint it would have, we have been able to estimate it by looking at the data of ingredients, their carbon footprints, in what quantities they are used, for example. And that's one of the directions that we have worked on. And you are able to look at the carbon footprint of the recipe itself, and tomorrow, don't be surprised, all of us are used to reading the menu card in the restaurant from right to left to look at the price. But although at the same time, there is additional information that is coming up, such as ingredients, the taste it has, nutritional value it has, etc. Don't be surprised if tomorrow you also get the carbon footprint also imprinted in the menu card that you will have. So that's going to be happening very soon. The other direction that we work when it comes to sustainability is reducing food wastage. Because the quantities in which ingredients are sourced or bought in households, or for that matter in restaurants, are not matching to what the recipes require. And they have a shelf life. So how do you optimize in a manner that you can generate recipes which are, or rather you can create recipes, cook recipes that reduce the food wastage is one of the other angles that we are working on. Lastly, the tool that I mentioned, Ratatouille, is a beautiful tool, by the way. I told you it mines from an astronomically large number of recipes. I told you already. How do you ensure that these recipes are palatable and tasty is one big question that we are asking. Second is, how do you ensure that these recipes are optimized for the taste for Italian palate or Indian or Brazilian palate is another direction that we are working on, and we have some answers to that. And a couple of other dimensions is that of, I want to eat or create a recipe having these 3 ingredients or 5 ingredients which is between 200 to 300 kilocalories. Can you optimize the recipe for that? And exactly in a similar manner, we can optimize the recipe for carbon footprint as well. So these are some of the directions which we are taking, which touch upon the sustainability aspect of it.
Great. And what are the biggest hurdles as such that somebody like you face to convince the culinary experts to accept AI tools?
Making it accessible to them, because remember when we created these applications and databases, chefs were in praise of it. Quite clearly, any chef who gets trained in the profession, they would have dealt with one cuisine typically, or a couple of cuisines, and a few hundred recipes probably, maybe 1,000 if they are really good experts, right? But talking about hundreds of thousands of recipes which are searchable, that show me an Italian recipe having olive oil, onion, but doesn't have ginger, and uses boiling as a protocol but doesn't roast it. Such a complex query, I don't think a human intelligence can easily pop up a recipe out of it, but a database can do it easily. So this was available, but making it accessible to them was very, very difficult. So we had to create Android apps, which is what probably these days people would like to use it on a mobile rather than trying to open their desktop and trying to use it. That's one of the hurdles that we had. Acceptance to the technology which we are creating. The second is convincing them that in your day-to-day problem, like Ruby was mentioning, that try solving my problem rather than trying to give me a solution to which I don't have a problem matching, right? So try solving my problem. So one of the biggest questions that I'm asking after the more metaphorical question that what does a woman want is, what does a chef want, right? What is it that they have in their mind that I need to find it out and answer those questions, he or she, that they are asking, right? That's what we are trying to answer here. And we had some challenges there, but we are solving them by adapting our answers to their questions rather than vice versa.
So Ruby, what do you have in your mind? So what hurdles do you think? Or
when I'm also creating recipes, I spend so much time thinking about what is it that I want to do, how do things pair, how can I have a conversation and arrive at something which would excite my fancy and have something put on a plate which people would enjoy. And that is a creative process, I would say. It takes time, it takes a lot of exchange with people, opinions, and also it's a lot of fun because you start your day and you go to work and you're talking about problems like why is the sponge not soft enough, or those are the kind of problems that we face as chefs, which is, I think, rather exciting. But I don't think I need convincing for this.
So can we safely say the future of food would be, AI driven henceforth?
It's a huge tool for us to navigate the questions that we have at our minds. So the creative process that I have is going to be very encouraged and enabled with the data that is in front of me, because it is a science, and the dependency on it will allow us to progress much faster, much quicker, and also allow us to create, on a holistic level, a lot of health for the people. I think today, food has changed so much, lives have changed so much. We don't have time to nourish our bodies. And that's something that I always constantly want to question and look at. Today, I want people to be able to hold a tablet or hold a bar, flip it around, read the nutritional value, and decide for themselves what is it that they're putting into their bodies. Do you put a product into your body which is made with hydrogenated vegetable fats, or do you put something in your body which is actually high on omega-3 fatty acids? It's something that I want you to ask yourself, and I think it's a direction that we're going to take in a very, very holistic way to improve the quality of food and nourish our bodies and also excite our bodies with very good flavor nuances.
Just one question from my side before I open the conversation to the audience. What ethical considerations should be kept in mind when using AI in food production, especially when it comes to job displacement and cultural appropriation aspects?
Big way.
Yeah,
big way. When we started collecting data, I was so happy that I have taken 2,543 recipes when we investigated 2015 actually. And some of my friends who are also very good critics, they came back to me saying that you take these 2,543 alive recipes coming from cookbooks created by some upper caste people, and you are declaring them to be Indian? Well, so that was a wake-up call for me. So we had to look at the diversity of the recipes that are available, which are not documented, varieties of recipes like the sambas and the rasams, that you have in the world. You need to collect them also. And we faced a lot of challenges, but one anecdote would be enough to say that. I keep getting lots of interesting queries, and as a scientist who has been working on esoteric topics like in silico drug discovery, network biology, etc., I never thought that I'll be engaging with people at such a large scale. One midnight, I got a mail from Ukraine. The gentleman called Alexander, he said that this is a cultural injustice, international cultural injustice that we need to fix. I said, I'm a person who is doing computational gastronomy, has nothing to do with such political or international problems. But then I read his mail carefully. He said that there is a dish called borscht. It's a soup, traditional soup. And he said that this is a Ukrainian recipe, and in your database you have mentioned it to be Russian. And with the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine, you can imagine this becomes a political controversy. So that is the kind of problem that we have to deal with when we are collecting data. And lastly, to touch upon the ethical considerations, nobody owns a traditional recipe. No copyrights or no patents can be taken on traditional recipes. But having taken the data, formatted it, structured it, and created algorithms on top of it, there is an IP that comes into the play here. And lastly, the ethical aspect that we need to keep in mind is that what is it being used for? Is it being used by a food processing company trying to create an ultra-processed food product? Or is it being used by a housewife or somebody who is trying to create a recipe in their kitchen? We need to think about that. But at the same time, it's a science which is agnostic about its applications. How it is being used eventually, unfortunately, I have to stay rather agnostic about it, but at the same time conscious about where I am applying my mind and intellect and how it is being used. That's what we are trying to do.
Thank you so much. Now we can take questions from the audience. Oh my God. Sure. So.
My question to Mr. Ganesh, thanks for the insights. And so in India, the cuisine cooking protocol changes every 100 kilometers and the flavor profile also changes every 100 kilometers. Right. So how do you account this in your models? And how are you taking into consideration the social, cultural, geopolitical ingredient-based influences into your recipes that you are trying to build in the model?
Good question. Thanks for asking that. Quite clearly, as I said earlier, it's a very, very rich and nuanced topic when you talk about the recipes. And the way you said, every few 100 kilometers the recipes change. The name of the recipe may be still a sambar or a rasam, but the variation changes. And the ingredients which are used in changes. What we have started off by, when we started this work, this question was being asked. And the thing that, okay, one of the things that you please notice is that computational gastronomy is a homegrown science, started from India and is being used worldwide now. That's a fact that you need to remember. And there are very few niche in sciences which have arisen out of right within India. Right? Having said that, we have to start somewhere. We have to start collecting recipes, and we used an approach called coarse graining. Right? Instead of saying that, looking at 200 varieties of sambar, we said if we have even 50, let's collect them first, structure them, build algorithms, such that when I have next 50 set of recipes coming up of sambar, I should be able to tag them better. So in a very recursive manner, we are trying to solve this problem. Quite clearly, we would never practically be able to collect all the variations in the recipes, given the fact that perhaps every household may have their own variation. But we are trying to collect it as much as possible in the coarse-grained fashion. That's how we are trying to address it. And the second one, the ingredients, again, collecting the data of flavors of the Guntur chili versus the Kolhapur mirchi, Lavangi mirchi is a big problem. And flavor molecules of these are obviously not available for all varieties. We are trying to engage either the industry or the government to help us creating the biggest repository of the flavors which can help us move forward. But right now, again, coarse graining is the approach that we have taken even there.
First of all, thanks a lot, Ruby and Dr. Ganesh, for the insightful insights. Sorry. So my question is to Dr. Ganesh. So I was reading your paper on the ratatouille, and it was from the 2022 paper. So correct me if some things have been changed. But my question is on the data set. I want to understand what some of the challenges that you faced while creating the data set. One is obviously you mentioned about the cultural diversity, but I also want to understand about some of the things that do change the flavor profile, like the ingredients that are used, like cast iron versus aluminium, those kind of things. And how do you plan to incorporate that? And is a more unstructured kind of data more suitable for creating the models? Sorry, one more question I get. So I also see that you have used GPT-2 models in your creating the models. So are you planning on using some sort of multimodal models that are coming right now into creating a more diverse sort of models to create more recipes? Yeah.
Sure. Some of these things will take it offline because I didn't know that there is a student of computational gastronomy in the crowd. Thanks for reading our paper.
I am just in AI.
Wonderful, wonderful. Great to know that. Great to know that. To very briefly to answer your question, some of the questions that you asked. Obviously, having the data that was fed into the model, how structured it could be, how very in a nuanced fashion it could be structured, was one of the biggest challenges that we had. Imagine that we have fed 1,18,000 recipes from 74 countries to that model, that Ratatouille 2022 model that we created. But the collecting this data and structuring it was a huge challenge. Taking the noise out of it is another challenge. And to answer your question, I strongly believe that as opposed to unstructured data, structured one is far better. Unstructured anyway, ChatGPT does. It is able to answer recipes, but we are trying to make it in a structured fashion. And I'll take it again offline when I talk to you a little more detail. Thanks.
Hi, it was great to hear Dr. Bag's perspective and your applications even of carbon footprint. I was really happy to see that it's not just the nutritional value or the flavor profile, but also how do we make more informed decisions that keep the planet as a high priority. But Ruby, I'd love to get your take on the future of cacao from a sustainability point of view and the rising prices of cacao and the climatic conditions. Does it worry you where we're headed from the future of cacao perspective?
So the crisis of cacao, of course, have come because of a lot of different factors that have affected this. But I think we are a lot more encouraged due to that reason, and we want to be able to create an environment for people to flourish from what they're doing. India has been growing cacao for over 70 years, and the distribution of the cacao and also the returns to the farmers have been very skewed. And today we want to be able to take charge of starting right from the source and moving straight up to the product which we are able to give customers, but all of that by giving back value to farmers. Now, as a crop, we're going to be doing a lot of study on this. The next 10 years are not just about creating delicious chocolate, but also finding very sustainable ways to encourage the growth of this crop. And it's really interesting to know how it was even distributed through the world, because the truth of it is chocolate doesn't need to be sold. It can be treated in any way and you will still enjoy it. And we're wanting to break that. We're wanting to start from the fruit of handling it the best that it needs to be done. Growing it in a fashion which is more sustainable by bringing traditional practices in the growth, and most importantly, giving back to the farmers. If we don't encourage people to do the right work, they're not going to want to continue doing that. A lot of times I've heard many different farmers, children, saying that they want to move abroad and they want to leave farming and actually study something else. We work with about 150 farmers over 1,500 acres of land. And the first question that I would always ask them and speak to them about is why? If you don't do what you do, we can't do what we do. And what you do is such a blessed entity in this world, and we're encouraging that in every possible way.
Okay, this is a question to both of you, Ganesh and Ruby. Now that you are looking at food so ruthlessly, objectively, does it change the way you enjoy eating or what you eat and all that?
So I have been a food agnostic, but over time, after I started understanding food, both in terms of actually cooking myself as well as enjoying the food, I have increased it. Like Richard Feynman said, that understanding the biology and the evolution of a flower doesn't take the beauty out of the flower, it actually enhances it. Same way, it's not ruthless, it's a beautiful investigation of food is what actually I think I'm doing, and that actually enhances the pleasure of having food rather than taking away from it.
Absolutely, I just want to add to that. with AI tools and with the knowledge of food, when you start articulating food not just by feel but by what it actually can be, you walk a journey which is just totally unstoppable. Today, in my teams, I work with a large diversity of chefs who've come from different places and different upbringing styles, and they bring a lot of different ingredients into the conversation that I have with them. We marvel, we taste, we just constantly keep trying to find that journey of what that particular ganache or what that particular cream makes you feel like. And when you start articulating the flavor notes also, you start walking that journey of understanding what else you can pair with it and what other beautiful creations that you can make with it. So in fact, it's changed it in a very positive way. It's changed it to a point where there's a lot of depth in the conversation and finally a lot more depth in the flavor that I'm able to create for customers. So it all starts, like I shared earlier, I don't look at my work as work. I look at it as an activity of creating joy. And that's what it is even for me, and I share that with the world.
Yeah. Firstly, thank you for a fabulous session on computational gastrology and, chocolates and so intelligently.
Gastronomy, not logy. The different connotations are different, sorry.
No problem. Thank you for correcting me. My first question to you, Dr. Ganesh, is, as an average consumer, today when I go to a grocery store and say I buy organic food, is anything in today's technology or in AI that would help me verify whether the food is truly organic or not? What can I do to really assess that? And my second question to Ruby is, as a follow-up question to what you were talking about for farmers that needs to be done, what do you think the government of India really needs to do to improve cacao production, say exports, etc.? What can we really do to make India a better exporter or a better producer of cacao and cacao products?
Very briefly, I can tell you that there is no easy way by which you can trace a food that you are getting in a shop or in a mall about it being organic actually. And the solution that technology can offer is blockchain, by which you can actually create the traceability and transparency of the food that has been produced right from the farm till wherever it is reaching to the shop. All right, and thereby you can have a QR code maybe, which can actually tell you about how it was created, how it was sourced, how it was further transported, and then it is reaching to you, thereby verifying the authenticity of it being organic. That's a solution which many of the NGOs and startups are actually trying to implement right now, but there is nothing that I know which is already working.
Just to answer your question, I'd like to share that, with the way this crop has been treated and how the distribution of this has been done, a large part of the good ingredients of the cacao in the processing are actually exported to a different country. And all these years we've been eating a product which we find synonyms with sweet. And I just want to give an example, like when I was growing up, my mom would sort of refer to a product which she's talking about as chocolate, but it's not chocolate. It's actually a sweet toffee, and she's saying, "Beta, chocolate mat khao." And in a general verbiage and a vocabulary, you sort of tend to associate chocolate to something that's very sweet. But it's not. It's not about the sugars, and it's not about the poor ingredients that have gone into it. And that's why I want to start by saying that I really encourage people to flip the label around and read what they're putting into their body. And coming back to what I was saying, a large quantity of the ingredients, the good ingredients of cacao, have actually been exported to a different country so that a Belgian chocolate maker can make something that's much better than what India makes. I think it's important for the government to make regulations of what are the percentages or what are the steps in processing cacao and how much can be exported and how much can stay into the country. And also dictate guidelines on creating recipes, because most of what farmers do are guided by corporate companies. That has got nothing to do with health or the wellness of the farmer community, but it's more to do with the formulation of what could generate larger or garner larger amount of sales for the corporate companies itself. If we had stricter guidelines and regulations on how to treat and how to process and what are the subsidies that give back, then I think the community is going to be a lot more encouraged, which is something that we're trying to do here today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bagler and Ruby. And as we wrap, shall, okay, we'll have just one more question.
Hi. Very fulfilling session and nice questions you put, Meenakshi.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Bagler, we met the other day at dinner, so nice to hear you. All the senses we have when we consume food, taste and all that, before that comes smell. See, the first impulse is smell. How do you quantify smell? Is there a science so precise for smell? That is one question to you. The next is to Ruby. Chocolate, what is the connect, human connect to chocolate? I mean, is there something which is fundamental in our nature to connect humans to chocolate so closely? And is there any post-chocolate era you look at where people will not like chocolate?
Okay, I'll take the smell question first. We have been quantifying all aspects of food, including the taste and the odor aspect of it. Between the taste and odor is far more complicated. We have been able to build machine learning models for a given molecule, small molecule, about what taste would it have. Bitter, sweet, umami, salty and sour we have yet to do. However, making a prediction of odor is rather difficult because given a compound, natural compound, it would have any kind of odor, combination of odors, and articulating those odors in a manner that they are quantifiable has been an extremely open challenge. In fact, this is a challenge called odor prediction or olfaction challenge. Is a standing problem right now, and we don't have easy way of quantifying it. However, we have found ways of analogously labeling odors, thereby allowing us to do some quantification with that. So that is already there. Flavority, if you go, molecules, corresponding to molecules, you have all kind of flavor terms, which includes taste term as well as a large number of odor terms. They are already there.
And I also think it's a rather complex subject matter because truly aroma has a lot to do with your understanding of the taste of a product. Even as chefs, when we are tasting, we do it with aroma and without aroma. When you block your nose and when you're eating something where you have not been able to smell it, the taste is, say, X, and when you have it with the breath, it's completely transformed and complex and it's different. And I think that is a very interesting question because it takes me back to a point where I say that there is no replacement for a chef with AI. It gives you tools, but without your sensory evaluation of smell, taste is close to impossible or close to inaccurate. Coming back to what you had asked me, it is so magical, and I sort of like keep sharing this with everybody that chocolate truly is such a magical ingredient where when we think of cuisines and what people could like and dislike, the one ingredient that everybody across the board loves is chocolate. It has also been one of the primary reasons for which we've had a certain amount of, I would say, poor practices in chocolate as well in recipe formulation because it is so easy for everybody to love chocolate. And what I mean by that is, today if I create something for you which is made with very, very right ingredients and the right approach to growing cacao and making chocolate versus something which is made with substituted ingredients which are like margarine or vegetable fat, 90% of us will still like both. It's because it's such a magical component that it didn't need to be better, it didn't need to be advanced and go to the depth of what we're trying to do today. And that's why with Manam Chocolate today, we're not just making something from bean to bar, but we're starting with the fruit by saying this is how you harvest, this is how you ferment the beans because all the fermentation flavor precursors that go into the bean create magical flavor notes to a chocolate. So when I speak to people today and talk about how a 60% dark has flavor notes of brown sugars, molasses, jaggery, etc., whereas a 67% completely transforms into a grapefruit, mandarin, tangerine, I've not added any ingredient to it. I've just formulated it with a percentage and I've also allowed the chocolate to emulsify to a point where cacao butter is emulsified and well distributed in the mix. Now that is something that's very difficult to articulate, and it only comes with a lot of experience of touching, feeling, seeing and tasting. But the truth is, it's such a magical composition, and when we dived deeper into understanding why, with the support of AI tools, we were able to create a flavor journey and a flavor map. Now this map has been divided into 4 quadrants, and if you see the ingredients that go into that to define those flavor components, it starts with it starts with something which is more core, say a cacao bold roasted note, to something that goes to a citrus note as extreme as a orange peel, to something as different as matured hard cheese. So if you see the scale, the components that define the flavor notes of chocolate are so complex. And it's a mix of all of this that makes chocolate so delicious. And actually, we're on that journey today to identify what is it really about these compositions that make it so delicious. And in the next 10 years, I'm really excited to see what form chocolate takes that makes it so audible to us and makes it so relatable to us as Indians also. And I don't envision a time ever where chocolate is not going to be liked by people, because today I'm not just talking to you as a chef who loves to mix ingredients and work with it, but I'm talking to you as a person who's gone to the science of it and telling you that there are molecules which are now articulated as flavor notes that make this product so complex. So it's going to be an exciting journey.
Thank you, Dr. Bagler and Ruby. And as we wrap this fascinating and rule-worthy session on computational gastronomy and chocolate, I hope we have sparked your curiosity through our discussion, and we have shown that the future of food can be as innovative as delicious. So a heartfelt thank you to our speakers for sharing their expertise and passion. And big thanks to our audience for your enthusiasm and thought-provoking questions. So could we have a round of applause for our experts and a second round of applause for yourselves, please. And lastly, another applause for the HLF team behind Science and the City, Somdatta and Teja, for including this particular vertical. I know I'm emphasizing it for the second time, for including Science and the City vertical in a literary fest. So we have started our invasion into literature as well. So thank you so much, and hope to see you all next year.